Welcome to Hearing, our program to improve people's hearing with the use of brain-informed technology. I'm Dr. Cal Roberts, Program Manager for the ARPA-H Hearing Program. I'm joined today by an absolute dream team of colleagues who are all here to help you achieve two goals for today. Number one, to understand the process for submitting a solution summary in response to our innovative solution offering, and then potentially a full proposal. And two, to meet other potential performers whose contributions to your team could enhance your proposal. I do not believe that there is any one entity, commercial or academic, capable of performing to the full extent of the innovative solution offering. Thus, working for ARPA-H is all about creating your team and organizing your team structure to maximize your capabilities and efficiency. For me, working at ARPA-H is an amazing and exciting opportunity. The members of the ARPA-H team are all wearing these t-shirts for your benefit so that you can identify who to speak to for information. Okay, so here's our plan for today. You will meet each of the members of my team as they come up to speak. But first, I'm delighted to have ARPA-H leadership here today. Please welcome the Director of the Health Science Futures Mission Office, Dr. Tyler Best.
Thank you, Cal. I recognize some of you all, so it's good to see some familiar faces. A lot of you, I recognize your names, but haven't actually met many of you in person, so it's really good to meet you. Yes, perfect. As Cal indicated, I'm the acting director. I'm leading the Health Science Futures Office. It's one of the four primary funding offices at ARPA-H, at the agency. Our name, Health Science Futures, is really the only specific office in the sciences, and we take that seriously. We really want to be on that cutting edge and do the future of health science. To really dig into things, I really want to kind of really focus on our mission. Our mission for the agency is to deliver health breakthroughs in years, not decades. Some of the things that you have read in the Hearing ISO, you may think are decades in the future, and maybe that could be true. But we really want to push the boundaries and really try and see if we can get that in years in the duration of the hearing program, rather than wait the decades for that future. As many of you may know, ARPA-H was modeled after DARPA. I know many of you from my days at DARPA. Back in the 50s, with the launch of Sputnik, that's that ball with the cables coming off of it, President Eisenhower and the administration at the time were very surprised that there was a satellite that was in space, that this technology was out in space. They didn't want that surprise anymore, so they founded the Advanced Research Projects Agency, housed it in the Department of Defense to prevent that strategic surprise. And over the years, many great foundational accomplishments came out of it. You see that the drawings of the nodes and the hubs there. That's the napkin that spawned the internet, communicating between computers and sharing information across them. DARPA founded, the stealth technology, self-driving cars, many other things. When ARPA-H was stood up 4 years ago in 2022, we had that same mission in that we wanted to create these foundational, transformative capabilities and technologies, but in the healthcare space. And I like to take an analogy, and I think it's actually apropos for this audience in particular. If you look at what a neuron does, a neuron is an integrator of excitatory and inhibitory postsynaptic potentials. All of that information is coordinated over temporal and spatial biophysics down to the axon hillock, where the action potential would be initiated and started. So in order to identify the threshold at which an action potential starts, you take the derivative of that voltage over time, right? And you can identify that inflection point on which the threshold for the action potential takes place. That is what we want to create at ARPA-H. We want to create these inflection points in the technology and the capabilities that are going to drive healthcare. We are not necessarily looking for these incremental excitatory postsynaptic potentials. You can do those on a one-off. Maybe that's a publication. Maybe that's a small grant or whatever. Those EPSPs really do advance the field, but we want you all to be creating this action potential at the axon hillock right now, as opposed to waiting for all these incremental EPSPs to happen to get you there. And it's really what we are focusing on, especially in hearing. There's a lot of advancement that needs to take place. You need to take into account all these EPSPs, IPSPs, all those failures as well as advancements in the field in order to get that inflection point that hearing can really drive the capabilities forward with. ARPA-H is very unique. We follow this DARPA model in that we have a lot of flexibility. Our program managers like Cal come in focused on specific problems that they are trying to solve. And it's through the program managers that are term limited, like DARPA, that are driving the innovation in the healthcare space. As I indicated, we are looking for that radical change. We're looking for that inflection point, not the incremental advances. Cal has a lot of autonomy, but at the same time, he answers currently to myself as well as Rafid here and Alicia, the agency directors, to really push the boundaries on what is possible. Ultimately, in hearing and seeing the proposals that come in from you all, he gets to make and build the portfolio around what he sees, what he envisions hearing being able to accomplish and delivering on the ultimate goals of the hearing program. And we're looking for real world impact. If you're interested in a publication, then maybe ARPA-H is not for you. And we want these real world outcomes, real world impacts. This is kind of a synopsis of where you will go through the life cycle of the program itself. We've launched hearing. You're here and understanding what Cal is looking for. Once those proposals come in, contracts are signed, you'll be asked to perform. If you're not familiar with that DARPA model, we call you performers because you have to deliver on and perform on those milestones, those metrics that are outlined in the ISO. Some of you may not be successful in delivering on those outcomes, and so you may stop partway through it. Maybe you're going to be wildly successful, and if so, we can negotiate with you to give you more funds and more, expand the scope and task of what you're doing to really deliver on those outcomes. Ultimately, we don't want these things to sit in a publication somewhere, but we want that real world impact and transitioning into the real world. As I indicated earlier, the Health Science Futures Office is really focused on the science. And we really think that the best way to predict the future actually is to control it. And in order to control the biology, we need to be able to read it. We need to be able to understand at a fundamental level what is happening in the biology, in the nervous system, in the brain, in the auditory system in order to control that auditory system. We need to be able to predict what the biology is due, what the synapses, what those cortical circuits are doing in order to process the sound that comes in and be able to perceive not only the sense and the perceive part of the audition there. We need to be able to write the biology. That means modulate, regulate, stimulate those circuits in order to fill in the gaps of what is not heard in the environment or what is needed to be heard based on what you're trying to pay attention to, and ultimately execute on those and have that playground, that space in which you can test, design and build these biological systems on reading, predicting, and writing the biology. That is how we really focus ourselves in the Health Science Futures Office, is developing that engineering-like approach to biology as opposed to a stochastic or incremental and piecemeal approach to how we do biology. I kind of described this already. This cycle is in the engineering space. We want to be able to, again, read, write, and predict the biology and execute it on there. This is a little bit redundant to what I just said, so I'm going to move on real quickly. And that's it. If you have questions, we are here to answer all of them. We really are trying to build a new framework, a new vision, a new understanding on how we go about doing biology in the Health Science Futures Office. So really hope that you can engage with Cal and his team and identify the needs and the capabilities that you have, while also identifying the needs that you have with others that can really fulfill the mission of what Cal has set out in the hearing program. So with that, I will turn the time back over to Rafid.
Right. Thanks, Tyler. And welcome, everyone. You will be having a neuronal anatomy quiz in about 45 minutes. Thanks to Tyler. It's very rare that I correct Cal, but I do want to correct. I'm only wearing this T-shirt for fashion purposes. This is not meant to help you at all. I'm Rafid Fadul. I'm the Chief Medical Officer here at ARPA-H. And I got to tell you, the turnout today tells me everything that I need to know about this program and whether this problem matters. Cal and I were chatting, and he's obviously reminding me that hearing loss is actually the largest sensory deficit in the world, and it touches every demographic, every age group, every zip code, and yet, and this is the part that should really stop everyone in their tracks. Hearing hasn't seen a major breakthrough in over 40 years. 40 years. Think about what's happened in that time period for, let's say, oncology, right? It's the world of difference. Think about cardiology, genomics. These are fields that didn't even exist, and now they're incredibly advanced. AI. Meanwhile, hearing has effectively stood still during this time period. This is what we define as completely unacceptable. This is the stagnation that ARPA-H seeks to root out. And I'll tell you just from a personal story. So I'm a pulmonologist, but I'll tell you a story about a patient that I had, who 71-year-old lady with COPD, who started seeing me for that capacity. But then over time, and she was very bright, active lady, but over time she started to fade a little bit. And then her daughter started joining the visits over the years because she couldn't catch everything, and she was missing some of the instructions, and she didn't want to say anything. And then, the daughter would keep in touch with me and let me know what was going on with her in between visits. And she was becoming more and more withdrawn, dejected, and depressed, right? And this had nothing to do with, she wasn't declining physically or mentally. She was declining acoustically, right? And this was costing her her connection to the rest of her family and society. That's what's at stake here, guys. It's not just hearing, it's connectivity, it's purpose. That's all tied into your hearing and your ability to connect with those around you. And so why is this so-called ARPA-hard problem? Has anyone heard the term ARPA-hard? Not the ARPA folks, but the non-ARPA folks. See a couple head nods. ARPA-hard, just so you know, when we talk about that word, is what are these audacious goals? The ones that no one else thinks you can do, right? That's the stuff that we want to do. The stuff that when you get it right, you dramatically change the field and you dramatically change the way people live their lives. This is an ARPA-hard problem. Hearing isn't stuck because the scientific community lacks talent or ambition. There's plenty of that in this room. It's stuck because it lives in between fields, right? There's no single field that can solve this all alone, right? So in order to do this, we need we need bioengineering, we need AI experts, material science, audiology. These are people who generally don't sit in the same room, right? And that's one of the superpowers of ARPA-H, is that we can convene the best of the best from a variety of fields, bring them all together to solve one problem. We look for things that are too risky for traditional founders, too audacious for industry, and too coordination heavy for one institution to pull together. And frankly, two things that are just too urgent to wait. That's our mandate. That's what we do. That's the exact pattern that ARPA-H defines as an ARPA-H program that we do. The vision is clear, the need is urgent, but the path is blocked. That's our target. So why ARPA-H? Well, let me kind of fill you in on our grand strategy and where we sit in the ecosystem of HHS. So NIH exists to really build this foundation knowledge and move it incrementally downfield. BARDA, they identified known threats and address those. FDA focuses on safety. CMS figures out how to pay for it. And then industry, they focus on returning on investor timelines, right? As everyone here knows. But what is ARPA-H? We are the through line that connects all of these things and creates what is waiting to exist. We're essentially a time machine, as Tyler put it, right? We compress what would ordinarily take 3 to 4 decades, and we do it in 3 to 4 years. And I don't say this with hyperbole. This is the goal. And so if anyone here doesn't want to work on that timeline, this is probably not the place for you. If anyone here is looking for a publication, this is probably not the place for you, as Tyler said. I'm going to reiterate that because I thought it was good you called that out. Our goal is to translate these concentrated science and technical bets into real-world capabilities and do this on an aggressive timeline. We de-risk in 3 ways: with investment, focusing on regulatory, and then also access. So we deploy $100, $200, $400 million at a time to solve problems, not to publish papers. We're not here for science fair projects. And we have the scale to reach every single American. So let me tell you what ARPA-H is, and just as importantly, what we are not. We are not a granting agency. I repeat, we are not a granting agency. This is not, here's your check, call me in 5 years when you have a paper. This isn't that place. We really believe in active program management. Tyler referred to it as milestone-based. He's 100% right. Our performers, which is all of you guys, you deliver against the milestones that we all agree to and set forth. And why that's important and why that's kind of the special sauce of why ARPA-H works and why DARPA works is because that gives us the ability to double down on things that are working and move away from things that are not. Right? We're not chained to ideas that are not working anymore. And we're going to push you hard. So just buckle up, get ready. Cal is a brilliant man, and he is set on his goals, and he delivers and he achieves. So I have full faith that he's going to deliver on this one as well. I ask you, no surprises. If things are going, sideways a little bit, pick up the phone. We're all on your team. We are all one team. We're all pursuing one goal together. So where does hearing fit in this kind of world of ARPA-H? It is a very high-profile thing. This is not a side bet. This sits squarely inside our core strategic imperatives: defeating devastating conditions, building platforms that amplify impact, and creating access for every American. Tech here is going to restore hearing and scaffolding for neural interfaces, sensory restoration, and human-machine integration. This is revolutionary. That means one platform with many possibilities. And we are watching this closely because getting this right, this opens up a new frontier for all of us. So what does success look like? It's really a giant leap in hearing restoration, one that we haven't seen in 4 decades. It's tech that reaches patients, not journals, not slide decks. And it's teams formed in this room today that you are going to define the space for the next 3 to 4 decades. You are going to do this. And ultimately, like, the net effect of this is you're going to restore people's connections. You're going to get them back to their families, back to their lives, back to their purpose. Gravity of this, it should weigh heavily on you because the opportunity here is tremendous. And I remind you that you are all the engine. You are all the best builders in the country, if not the world, to tackle this problem. So for that, I'm deeply grateful to all of you for making this real. Poster days, this is where the magic happens. You connect, you build teams, you find complementary skill sets amongst the crowd. You know the saying, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. This is that moment. This is that dare to be great time. So I encourage you all, apply yourselves, bring others to the table, send great people our way. Bring us the version of the idea that keeps you up at night, not the one that you think is safe and conservative, right? This is the chance to be revolutionary. The stakes are simple, guys. If we do this right, millions of Americans and millions beyond our borders will have a chance to get a piece of their lives back because of the work that you do. So with that, I ask you to let's get building. And I'm going to pass the mic now to my colleague, Neil Wyants. And the reason why he's here, come on up, Neil, is that we've said this a million times. We don't do science fair projects. This has to get out to the people. This has to get out to market. And commercialization, therefore, is one of the biggest things that we can do. And with that, I'll turn it over to our head of commercialization, Neil.
Thanks, Rafid. You are a tough act to follow, I will say. Question, how many of you is this the first Proposers Day that you've been to? So me too. I joined ARPA-H only about 2 months ago. My background is as an investor, as Rafid said. The last 7 years I was doing investment work for a hospital system in Ohio, and 10 years before that I was doing direct investing for a family office, mostly health tech, a lot of Israeli and very early stage technologies. And if you would have told me a year ago that I'd be standing here in front of you, working for a federal agency, I would have told you were crazy. But the mission of ARPA-H, the opportunity to work with innovators like you, solving these huge problems, was just too compelling to stay away from that, and I suppose Rafid's charm. We want you to bring new technologies to market in 3 to 5 years, not 10 to 15, as you've heard a couple of times now, and as I think you're going to hear a couple more. That means understanding and managing both the technical risks and the commercial business risks. You know, the best VCs, they mitigate risk better than other people. And we want our performers to do the same thing. So what kind of risks are we talking about? We're talking about IP risks, regulatory risks, reimbursement risks, operating risks, financing risks, the business risks that can stop you in your tracks, even if your technology is successful. Best technical innovations frequently fail in clinical settings, and there's a variety of reasons why, but here are the top handful. First, teams build before validating real-world workflows. Can you fit into the system as it's working? Second, teams assume reimbursement without testing it. They discover reimbursement pathways that they thought were there don't exist, or the pathways are there, but the economics don't work. Third, teams underestimate regulatory requirements and timelines, and you'll hear more about the FDA a little bit later. And then finally, teams ignore behavior change, patient behaviors and clinicians' behaviors. And it's these behavior changes, this friction, that frequently kills deployment, more than the technical reasons. So keep track of these things. These failure modes map directly onto the risk categories that I, as an investor, used to look at, and that ARPA-H looks at now as well. And they're all avoidable if you start early. So start thinking about these things. If we want to be successful at accelerating the time to market, we really need to think about that critical path to the market. What assumptions, technical and business, are you making that, if not true, will kill your project? Kill your project if they're not true. What preconditions do you need to think about to move to the next step that, if you don't accomplish them, your project is going to die? For ARPA-H performance, a critical path to market typically includes demonstrating that the technology works. That's going to be the bulk of what you do initially, but you can't forget about demonstrating clinical validity and effectiveness, demonstrating workflow integration, demonstrating patients will adopt and use the technology the way it's intended, validating regulatory and reimbursement, but most importantly, validating your business model. Are you going to be sustainable after you leave ARPA-H funding? We want to make sure that you are, and we want you to start thinking about that early on in the process. Critical path thinking forces teams to focus on the assumptions that, if not right, will kill the project, and I can't reiterate that enough. The Office of Commercialization, my office, is here to help address those issues. We don't expect you to come in having detailed commercialization plans, but we do expect you to have thought about the issues that, if you don't get them right, are going to derail your project, and all that technological innovation will have been for naught. So I look forward to working with you. My office looks forward to working with you. And with that, let me turn this back over to Cal.
Here's what I've learned so far. Hearing is a high visibility program within ARPA-H. The leadership recognizes that what you are about to do is really, really important. And so let's really now get into the heart of why we're here. And Chris, why don't you come up here and join me? So, what if your brain could hear what your ears cannot? Well, let's run the video here. So let's review how we hear. Sound passes down the ear canal, causing the eardrum to vibrate. In the cochlea, mechanical to neural transduction occurs, and sound information from the cochlea travels via the auditory nerve to the primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe, where auditory perception arises. When there is degeneration in the cochlea or the auditory nerve, the quality of the signal deteriorates and the understanding of sound degrades. The hearing technology consists of a brain-computer interface that sits in the auditory cortex of the brain, listens to what you hear, and wirelessly sends that information to an external neural processing unit where an AI-driven algorithm determines what sounds need to be modified to improve understanding. For those frequencies that the auditory pathway is still capable of transmitting, sound will be amplified or subdued. Think of this pathway as a continuously optimized brain-driven hearing aid. But for frequencies that the auditory pathway can no longer transmit, the AI-driven signal will be sent wirelessly back to the cortical brain-computer interface to create or suppress sounds directly in the brain. Thus, the hearing device controls both what you're capable of hearing through your ears and what you can only hear through direct cortical brain stimulation. So, to date, hearing loss has always been thought of as an ear problem. What hearing does is it introduces hearing loss as a neurological condition. Hearing will be the first ever neural-informed hearing assistive program. It will be delivered by a minimally invasive technology personalized to the unique needs of that patient and potentially accessible to the entire hearing impaired community. So, hearing will help almost everyone with hearing loss. And so again, here's how the technology we see occurring. So sound enters the ear. It gets then listened to in the brain by the intracortical device that will read and record what you are hearing and then transmit that message externally to the neural processing unit, where the AI-driven algorithm will determine what's missing. Why are you not hearing clearly? And then send out two messages. The first message will be back to the dynamic sound modulator with this brain-informed hearing aid idea, and then transmit that code for those frequencies and those sounds that your ear is still capable of transmitting. But for those sounds and frequencies that you can no longer transmit through your ears, it will then send a second signal directly back to the brain-computer interface for direct stimulation of the auditory cortex. And thus, we'll be able to personalize for each patient's unique auditory neural profile, and therefore to restore the ability to hear speech in noise. So we break down our programs into what we call technical areas. And for the hearing program, there are three technical areas. The first technical area is the brain-computer interface. And that's therefore the technology that will therefore be within the auditory cortex. That's the technology that is going to listen to what you hear, read it, record it, and transmit it to the external neural processing unit. Second technical area will be that external neuroprocessing unit combined with the dynamic sound modulator. And so that's where the message is going to be understood. The AI-driven algorithm will determine that which can be still transmitted through your ear and that which will be transmitted directly to the brain. And then the third technical area will be that AI-driven algorithm. It'll be that neural processing system that will actually figure out what you're missing and how to restore those sounds. And so with that, I'm going to pass off to Swetha Chandrasekhar to go through each of the technical areas. Swetha.
Oh, hi, everyone. So each of these technical areas have strong milestones and deliverables that are associated with them. And so for technical area 1, performers are asked to develop an intracortical device, as Cal mentioned, that is capable of recording and stimulating at the auditory cortex, most importantly, to be delivered in a minimally invasive way. And so a successful solution will address 3 main challenges. The first is, what actually is the device? Is it electrochemical? Is it a nanoparticle? Is it a biohybrid? You come to us with your most unique solution. Second is, how is it going to be delivered? If you can't put a hole through the skull, is it endovascular? Is it transvascular, subgaleal? Come to us with your ways of getting to the auditory cortex without having to put a burr hole into the skull. And finally, where will it be delivered? Within the auditory cortex or even outside, if there are areas outside of the auditory cortex that are critical for speech and noise. And so additional considerations include that this must be done in a single delivery procedure. You have to consider wireless powering, bidirectional communication with other devices, and additional technical requirements that are laid out in the Innovative Solutions opening, specifically related to spatial resolution and sampling rate, for example. For TA1, we've said it so many times now, what's considered out of scope is delivering that device through the skull or any devices that are designed to have batteries that are subdural or deeper. So again, we ask you to refer back to the ISO. Okay, so for technical area 2, performers are asked to develop this wearable sound modulator that'll serve as a central data hub between the hardware that you get from TA1 and the software that you get from TA3. And so a solution would require you considering all of the engineering components. That's wireless powering, transmission, how you're communicating between devices, where's the data being stored and processed, and specifically for TA2, how are we collecting the sound around us? What kind of microphone technologies need to be used? And ultimately, all of these pieces come together to create the dynamic sound modulation. And so your solution has to have 2 main capabilities. One, it has to be capable of converting between audio and neural signals. And second, to be able to send those signals back to the BCI sitting at the auditory cortex to deliver that stimulation. And so some of the additional metrics that you'll see in the ISO include how long should the device be powered? How does it bidirectionally communicate again with the other devices that are part of the whole hearing device? How many modes can you bring to that device? A record only mode or a record and stimulate mode? And then additional considerations around the latency time, the powering time, always keeping in mind the clinician and the patient outcomes at the end of the day. And so for TA2, what we consider out of scope are anything that is cumbersome to the patient. We don't want to alter their daily living. And so anything that sits outside of or limits their normal daily living would be considered out of scope. And finally, for TA3, the development of an auditory read and write algorithm. One, that can interpret the neural signals that we're reading and recording at the auditory cortex. 2, that can dynamically control that sound modulator continuously. And 3, to deliver the signal of exactly that precise neurostimulation to the auditory cortex. And so all of that personalizable to a new patient in under 30 minutes. I'll ask, right? So a solution would consider data collection, the development of the algorithm itself, and ultimately the clinical outcome, but very specifically, the data collection looks like creating an auditory neural profile that speaks to different types of hearing loss and different types of real-world situations. The algorithm development itself will have to have a strong focus on data harmonization between the existing data that we've already collected and newly collected data, and how to take that data and really drive it to personalize to each patient, and then ultimately methods to assess the improvement, right? How do we assess restored audibility to a patient, and how do we judge whether a patient has improved ability to hear speech and noise as compared to state-of-the-art technologies today? And so the goal is for the hearing device and the hearing technology is to allow the patient to decide what it is that they want to hear, and to give that control back to the patient. So we ask that as you're developing your proposals, there are a number of thought-provoking questions that we put here that we don't necessarily have the answer to, and we're hoping that you do. So do you envision that this is going to be 2 devices, one on each side of, one in each auditory cortex, or do we only need one? Can you design that device to be removable in the event of an adverse effect, or the patient no longer wants the device? Can it be removed safely? Are there other parts of the brain, as I mentioned earlier, that we should be considering apart from the auditory cortex that are critical for speech and noise? And for the audiologists in the crowd, what other sub-outcomes related to speech and noise should we be looking at, that we should be measuring when we're looking to demonstrate the efficacy of our device? And then finally, how will your hearing system be meaningful across different types of hearing loss, from somebody with mild to moderate hearing all the way to severe? And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Chris to talk about timeline.
Okay, so when do we want this done by? Ultimately for hearing, it's a 4.5-year program that culminates in a first-in-human trial to demonstrate early feasibility of a closed-loop neural recording and simulation system capable of restoring one's hearing in speech and noise. And with that, we expect there's going to be several milestones that you're going to achieve along the way. And we break this down across 3 phases, as you see on the slide. The first phase being research and development, phase 2 being preclinical work, and then phase 3 being the clinical demonstration, where we pair this with performance metrics that Swetha highlighted earlier on the last 3 slides, and are also detailed in the ISO. So phase 1, if we start from left to right, we're expecting 2 major proof of concept demonstrations. The first one being a demonstration of the hearing system in animal models, showing that your hardware prototypes can communicate and be powered wirelessly, meeting the specifications that we defined in the ISO. And at this stage, to note, you do not have to deliver the device minimally invasively, as we highlighted. In this case, for phase 1, you can deliver the device through the skull. So we just want to make that clarification now. For the second demonstration that we're expecting in phase 1, what we expect to see for the software side is you being able to show that in relevant patient populations, and of course with a IRB-approved protocol, how your system will interface with the auditory cortex and modulate hearing via neural recordings and stimulation methods. Phase 2 focuses on integration and system-level capabilities, where at this point, what we're expecting is that for the TA1 and TA2 hardware, you will start to lock into your final form factor design and begin demonstrating closed-loop operation of your system in large animal models. By the end of this phase, we expect you to demonstrate device delivery using the minimally invasive procedure that you have developed. For going back to the software, TA3, you should be able to show again with an IRB-approved protocol that your software now can operate in a closed-loop method, improving one's hearing performance via either recording and stimulation methods. We also expect that within this phase, you'll begin integrating the software into your TA1, TA2 system. Phase 3 is going to conclude in a 6-patient clinical demonstration spanning from mild to severe hearing loss. Here, you will need to show meaningful improvements in speech and noise understanding, not only in the clinical setting, but also in real-world environments, reflecting the day-to-day benefits this system could provide compared to when a patient uses a standard hearing aid or state-of-the-art technology. Further, we anticipate that your hearing system can be personalized to a patient's unique need based on their hearing loss profile and cortical plasticity. So one additional point to this slide, along with the technical delivery, you will need to maintain a relationship with the FDA as a regulatory partner throughout the program. To help set the stage for this, we have invited a guest speaker from the FDA today to outline potential regulatory pathways for your proposed solutions. Now, the next question you're thinking is, and the point of why we're here today as well, is who should be on my team? Our answer is very straightforward. Your team should include the technical, clinical, and regulatory expertise necessary to address all three technical areas within the hearing program. As Cal emphasized earlier, and much of the ARPA-H leadership as well, this program requires a deeply interdisciplinary effort, bringing together the expertise in audiology and ear-related conditions, neurotechnology engineering, hardware and software integration, and importantly, being able to factor in the insights of end users here. Each TA is interdependent, which is why your proposed solution must span all three TAs. If you are still assembling a team, you can use the QR code that's on the bottom right of the screen. And that you can access the hearing teaming page to where you can find your teaming partners or even submit your own profile if you have not done so yet. Finally, today is not just an opportunity to learn about the program, but we encourage you to speak with one another. We have two different sessions planned. We have the lightning talks later today, which will be used as an opportunity for many of you to come up here and describe your own technologies and who you're looking for as partners. And then we also have the poster session. I'll now hand it back over to Cal to close out the hearing overview.
I have an amazing team. I have wonderful people who work with me. So thank you. So what's the big picture? Big picture is, what is this going to do for patients? And so we talk about the various stages of hearing loss. And so for those people who are in that mild to moderate hearing loss, what we want to do is provide sound that's more natural to the patient, and so that it sounds more like natural sound. For those patients with moderate to severe hearing loss, we're going to restore sound to what it used to be before they lost their hearing. And for those with the most severe hearing loss, we're going to produce a range of sounds that has never before been possible. When we started this program, we established three tenets. What was it that we really wanted to do? Number one is we wanted to create something that was more effective than what's currently available. Number two, it had to be modestly invasive, such that people would want to have this put in their head. Number three, had to be safe. Had to be safe enough to be in place permanently, at least potentially permanently, and with the possibility that it could be removed if needed. So with that, let me introduce Ryan Daniels. Ryan Daniels runs our program here that is responsible for the actual contracting. So about how you would become a performer. Ryan?
Morning. I will try to keep this as brief as possible, but hopefully helpful. My name is Ryan Daniels. I'm an agreements officer, contracts guy for ARPA-H. So I just want to give you some ISO basics. That's the innovative solutions offering. Essentially, it's our ARPA-H's version of a solicitation. You guys are probably used to NOFOs or BAAs. It's similar to that in that you're looking for the best ideas. And to make sure that Cal is able to get his vision, he wants a variety of approaches to do that, to make the impossible possible, which is getting my mom to wear a hearing aid. Right. So here are some highlights. Number one, read the ISO. Whatever we say in here, whatever's in the FAQ, the ISO is what is supreme and takes precedence over anything else that we may have said. All awards will be other transactions, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what those are. And all entity types in teaming are encouraged. There's no funding limits for the individual OT projects, but Cal is working with a budget. And so it's often the case that really amazing performers cannot get funded as much as he'd like to. If you want to go to the ARPA-H website and look at our awards, you can kind of get an idea of what the spectrum of those award amounts are. If you have a really big idea, cost share is always welcome for part of that. Again, questions are encouraged, so do ask. Cal's team is at the ready to answer those questions for you. We hope to put those up on the FAQ, so your questions might be reworded or consolidated, but we'd like all of the interested proposers to have access to those answers to help them with the solution summaries and proposal preparation. Right. It's important to know that non-conforming submissions may not be evaluated. This is also in the ISO. Please follow the instructions. The appendices are not just there to force you into some very government-specific thing. They are there to give you an easy guide so that you're able to prepare your work. So the good part, we do other transactions here, at least in this case. What is another transaction? It's a contract. So are FAR procurements and grants. They are also contracts. This is different though. The idea is that it would be more flexible. If you've ever heard the Oliver Wendell Holmes quote, men must turn square corners when dealing with the government. This is the opposite of that. They're supposed to be more collaborative and let us work together. A big part of that is the ability to negotiate things like intellectual property. So part of that is please do review the sample. The QR codes are there. It's also just, you can just Google ARPA-H sample OT. I think, as mentioned previous, an important part will be looking at the milestone payment schedule. We do fixed price milestones. You have to propose a milestone. That's hard. You have to show how you're going to accomplish it, and then you have to prove out that you did it, and you get paid a fixed amount. So it's not cost reimbursable, where you just do whatever, or whatever your cost was, you get paid for that. These will have to accomplish those milestones in order to be paid. Look at the boilerplate as well. I know that a lot of our universities have a lot to say about our publications and IT security and property, while a lot of our smaller companies sometimes have issues with the end terms deal, and then everyone has issues with IP. I can tell you just quickly that our IP is very similar to Bayh-Dole. It's licensing, not ownership based, and we have rooms within the structure to negotiate that. Eligibility information, we really want anyone to apply. There are a few exceptions to that. FFRDCs and other government entities, we don't let them be primes or subs, except in like very specific cases. And but if you want to participate, or they want to participate, contact directly. We can see if there's a way for them to support the program. There may be organizational conflicts of interest. So our support contractors, for example, are not allowed to participate as primes or subs. And then there are, you know, some awardees that run afoul of some of our national security interests that are also not able to perform. And also, you need to be registered in sam.gov prior to proposals being due. So that's a little over 2 months. It's not that hard. So please be on top of that if you're not already in there. So here's a little simple example of just how the process works. So first, you have to submit the solution summary. It's mandatory. You can't go any further unless you submit the solution summary. And that deadline, I believe, is at the end of the month on the 29th. So we'll keep saying that date just so it sort of sticks in your mind. It's a very simple scenario. You just need to, it's 4 pages, nice and simple, and it keeps the resources down in case you do not want to move forward, or if you don't move forward. Here are the evaluation criteria. Read these at your own leisure. Again, you'll see that technical merit is what's most important, not a question of cost or anything like that. It is important. Cal and any other evaluator is going to need to stick to the 4 corners of the proposal. They can't fill in what you missed, unlike the device that Cal is hoping to design. And it's always good to not make them go hunt for anything. Cal, so obviously you want to follow the ISO and what you need to address there technically, but keep these in mind, that this is how your proposal will be judged. So again, here's a little bit more about the evaluation process. Step 1, super simple, cover page, 4 pages in the Appendix A format, and a ROM. So nice and simple. Step 2 will be your proposals, a bit more detailed. There's 3 volumes. There's the technical, and that would also have the task description document, which is essentially a statement or scope of work, the price proposal, and so that will be the spreadsheets for you and any of your other your partners who are performing substantive work, maybe not vendors or whatever, but if you need clarification, we're always happy to provide that information. And then volume 3 is the admin and national policy document, and that's where you provide information about security, current and pending support, HSR, ASR, and any conflicts of interest, background IP, that sort of thing. All of sort of the ancillary information. This is the final guidance, Monitor SAM. So modifications to the ISO will be made there. And that will be, that last version is the official version of the ISO. It's what takes precedence. So please do be aware and keep on SAM.gov. I think you can sign up for notifications and stuff like that. Conform to all the ISO requirements. You don't want to get kicked out for a stupid reason. And so we encourage you just really to follow that format. It is there to help everyone. I'm just going to say it again, June 29th and August 14th. 629-814. You can think of it as a two-step verification, but please do keep those in mind. We don't want these just trailing in whenever. Q&A, I think this is specifically from Cal's team. Just Control F the ISO before you ask a question. There's a good chance the answer is in there already, and we want to make sure that we're spending most of our time answering questions where we forgot something and you do need some additional advice. And then I think the last thing I have is bing bong. Let's go next.
All right. Next up, to give you more technical information on how to prepare your solution summary and then your full proposal, from my team, Bill Woodcock.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to see so many people here interested in this wonderful program. My name is Bill Woodcock, and that PMP after my name means I'm a project management professional. And 3 of the most important aspects of managing project are scope, schedule, and cost. And you heard so far this morning, Swathan, Chris, and Cal all talk about the scope and the schedule. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit this morning about that third aspect, the cost. So, as Ryan mentioned in the last talk, 3 weeks from today, when your solution summaries are due, we are going to want to see a basis of estimate level cost estimate. So, you might think of what we're going to need in the full proposal is going to be a point. It's where you're going to land with your proposal. You might think of the basis of estimate as what's also called a rough order of magnitude, which could be anywhere from here to here. We're going to want you to be kind of more like here. We want a very reasoned and reasonable estimate. So there's a template provided in the appendix. The basis of estimate doesn't count towards the 4-page limit. And we get one basis of estimate for the entire team, not separate for each team member. Please keep in mind, important point, the most salary we can ask for, or you can ask for a specific member of your team is $228,000. That's the value of the NIH salary cap. And also remember to please break your basis of estimate out in the categories provided. Again, very high level at this stage. When you are selected to submit a full proposal, you will submit a full volume 2. There is a cost template. Again, that's one of the appendices on the ISO. We need you to not just fill that out for you as the prime, but each subcontracting organization needs to fill out that spreadsheet completely. And if you have subcontractors of subcontractors, they need to do the same thing. There's also a cost proposal narrative, which is included along with the spreadsheet. Again, I'm not going to read every bullet point. You'll be able to do that on your own. But that's where we see your supporting information, your cost value analysis. We will also require backup documentation for any material and equipment items exceeding $10,000. That is either one purchase, of an item that's $10,000, or 10 purchases, or a purchase of 10 items, that's $1,000 a piece. So some guidance to kind of help you with submitting the cost proposal. Do include a cost estimate of total funds requested from ARPA-H, and I'll jump upon a point Ryan made. Please include the amount of any cost share, if any. If you have letters of support from any sources of cost share, that would be very welcomed as well. Do include an itemization of your subcontracts. Please don't, when you submit your proposal, say, oh, well, we're thinking about a subcontract with this entity, but we're not really sure yet. You need to be certain. We're going to evaluate proposals on their cost proposal based on that level of certainty, that level of granularity, that level of clarity. Please state how the proposed costs are realistic for fulfilling those scope and schedule commitments that you've made in the technical part of the proposal. As I like to say to my teammates, the budget and the technical piece go hand in hand. One informs the other, and it's a two-way street. And also include how the costs are consistent with the statement of work according to that. Don'ts, please don't change the formulas in our spreadsheet. Please don't. It would be bad. Don't break the spreadsheet. I think that's enough said there. Also, don't edit the spreadsheet. Don't delete anything, or please don't make your own spreadsheet. Don't give us something that's not in Excel. Please don't use a Google Sheet or anything like that. And don't try to buy it. I think you've heard the message loud and clear so far. We're not going to award to the lowest bidder. We're not going to award to the highest bidder. We're going to award to the best bidders. We're going to award to those proposers whose critical paths are clearest, make the most technical sense, are realistic, meet the challenge that we've presented, and that are also cost realistic. One last topic I would like to talk about with your administrative requirements for the proposals is that also when you submit your proposal, we're going to ask that you submit a separate volume of administrative materials to help fulfill our research security requirements. Those items in a package should be a list of biosketches for key personnel, current and pending other support documents, also for those key personnel, those lists of collaborators and other affiliations, and then that all goes into the administrative and national policy requirements document. That's your cover page. So these very helpful boxes show where you can get that information. So if you need questions, if you have questions as to how to fill out that package, those are there. An individual or senior or key person is someone who contributes substantially to your science. What needs to be included on a biosketch? I'm sure many of you already have them, but if you need more information, it's there. And you need to withdraw your proposal if ARPA-H asks research security questions. We will cross those bridges if we get to them, but the very short answer is no. And I have just met my time, and I believe it's okay for me. Chris or Swetha? Oh, shows I have missed my time. We are now we're taking a 15-minute break, as I understand. So thank you. I look forward to answering your questions as the day goes on, and good luck to all of you. Have a great day.
Okay, so let's get started. So a couple of themes that we've heard so far this morning has to do with the fact that we are looking at the end of the day to have a product that can help patients. And we know the fundamental to that is the regulatory process that is required in order to have a product that we can use with patients. So it is an absolute thrill when you're talking about, like, did you really get the best people here? It's an absolute thrill here this morning to have Dr. Julia Slocum here, who comes to us from the FDA, who's a truly an authority on what we're trying to do here today. So, Dr. Slocum.
All right, so I only have 15 minutes to talk, so I'm going to talk fast. I know most of you have already interacted with FDA in some capacity, but not all. So I'm going to move relatively quickly through some of the early slides that we're going to look at and try and focus on how do you interact with FDA for a novel device and some of the alternative pathways we have for interacting and working with us that you might not be familiar with. So I'm Julia Slocum. I'm in the Office of Neurological Devices and Physical Medicine, which is not the office that you're going to be interacting with for most of your submissions. You'll be interacting with OHT1. Now, both of our offices are within the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, one of the 7 centers within FDA. Now, within CDRH, we have our Office of Product Evaluation and Quality, and underneath that we have our 8 offices, and these sub-offices, you're going to be looking to talk to OHT1, and I live within OHT5. So you might be wondering, why am I here to talk to you today? Good question. So the majority of BCI devices that have come into the center thus far have been interacting with OHT5, and I've been involved with the review of almost all of those devices. Now, we also have a few devices in OHT1, which I've also been involved with, so it made sense to send me. I've been told for most of you that the majority of the novel aspects of your device are going to be focusing on the algorithms that you're using and the actual implantation in the brain, which would be reviewed by my office. OHT1 would be consulting my office, so that's why I'm here to talk to you about that. Now, we expect that most of you have a feel for what data you're going to need to develop for a cochlear implant, but the data needed for a BCI device tends to be a little bit more and a little bit different, naturally. So when you think about how to engage with FDA, know that the most important thing about us is that we take a risk-based approach to the regulation of medical devices. So the first question you'd need to iron out is what regulatory pathway you're going to fall under, as this will significantly impact how you engage with us and how much data you're going to need to get to market. Note that the assessment of risk depends critically on both the intended use and the technological characteristics of your device, and this risk assessment will determine what classification your device falls under. Now, your device could fall under Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 devices, Class 1 being the lowest risk devices, Class 3 being the highest risk devices, and traditionally, the majority of BCI devices have fallen under Class 3 devices for long-term permanent implantation and use. If we're talking about less than 30 days, it might fall into a Class 2 device, but I'm guessing most of these would not fall into that category. With that in mind, you'd probably be focusing on that Class 3 designation. Now, if your device falls into Class 2 or Class 3, which most of your devices do, then you'll need to engage with FDA often throughout the total product life cycle of your device, which is depicted here. Now, there's a lot of acronyms on this slide. Don't worry, we'll come back to these in the next few slides. But what I want to emphasize here is that they're both mandatory and optional pathways for you to interact with us long before you get to that marketing submission. And we encourage you to do so. This is a relationship that we're forming from where I stand. A lot of people look at FDA as the big bad FDA, but where I come from is we all have the same goal, to get safe and effective devices to patients quickly. And so the more you talk with us early on and establish that relationship, the smoother that pathway will be. So if you want to run a clinical study for your BCI, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to need FDA approval in order to launch, as all significant risk studies require FDA oversight in the United States via an investigational device exemption, IDE. The Center for Devices recognizes 3 types of IDEs. While we know other centers have different designations, we review them as early feasibility studies, traditional feasibility studies, and pivotal studies. Majority of BCI sponsors begin their work in humans as an EFS, early feasibility study. These studies don't require the same level of evidence as required for a traditional feasibility study or a pivotal study. That's why it's a great place to start, as long as you're going to be starting that study in less than 10 patients. If you're starting in a small population like that, sometimes you don't need to have the same volume of data in terms of your biocompatibility or chemical characterization or other testing. Additionally, EFSs are designed to allow you to make changes to your device throughout its life cycle, which is really unique to EFSs. And that allows you to kind of experiment and figure out what your device can do, try new things with your patients without having to go back and start a new study each time, like how most countries regulate these early studies. So I want to emphasize we have a EFS guidance document linked at the bottom of this slide that might be helpful to you as you start to learn more about what's involved for an EFS and what's required. Second, though, we have traditional feasibility studies, which many investigators overlook. They like to go straight from an EFS to a pivotal, but I'd emphasize that a traditional feasibility study holds some useful potential for those who aren't quite sure about their outcome measures yet, or aren't quite sure about the appropriate design for their pivotal study. A traditional feasibility study can be a great way to kind of test out if this is working and if you're moving in the right direction before you launch a pivotal study, which requires significant investment and time. Oh, and third, I mentioned the pivotal study. So this is where you use a finalized device to collect data in support of your future marketing submission. These data produce valid scientific evidence of device safety and effectiveness for the device in its intended use in order to support that future marketing submission. So in order to support the development and progression of those IDEs, as well as your overall understanding of how the FDA works, we have a variety of interaction mechanisms shown here that we house under an umbrella we call the Q submission program. Now, when it comes to interaction, as I mentioned, talk to us early and often. That's our tagline, but I can dive into these interaction mechanisms kind of later in our fact session if anybody wants to, or after this talk if you want to come up and talk to me about any of them. But in short, we have a variety of interaction mechanisms that allow you to do everything from come in and just give us a pitch of what you plan to do, to getting written feedback on proposed study protocols or testing protocols. Now, I want to emphasize that last one there, the Breakthrough Devices Program. The Breakthrough Devices Program gets a lot of hype. You might have heard about it already. Now, I want to emphasize that you have to meet some very specific criteria to be admitted into the Breakthrough Devices Program. And most devices aren't granted entry. But if you were not granted entry, that doesn't mean that it's a huge deal. You will still be able to interact with us early and often. The only thing that the Breakthrough Devices Program is going to do is give you expedited interactions with us during that pre-sub process for certain interactions. And then it also gives you access to be able to apply to another program called TAP, which we'll talk about next. But in order to gain access to the Breakthrough Devices Program, you have to meet certain criteria, as I mentioned. So you need to support that the device is more effective than available alternative treatments, and that you're treating you're developing a device that will treat or diagnose a life-threatening or irreversibly debilitating condition. So with that in mind, I want to emphasize again, the Breakthrough Devices Program allows you to get our feedback on questions in a slightly faster timeline. So instead of a pre-submission, they're called sprints. And it allows you to apply to the TAP program. Now, the TAP program is a newer program you might have heard about at FDA. Now, we all know that the typical medical device development process starts with an idea, and if successful, ends with reimbursement and widespread adoption by patients and providers. However, these two extremes of the process and the process in between can be sequential and siloed, where the needs of various parties are poorly understood. However, FDA is in a unique position to help innovators understand that development of risk and encourage investigators to mitigate it by optimizing evidence collection early on and interacting with FDA. The concept of TAP is that early, frequent, coordinated interaction with the medtech ecosystem speeds patient access by helping innovators optimize strategies for faster commercialization. And that we understand that commercialization is a surrogate for patient access. So this results in the TAP program. This results in each TAP sponsor having regular interactions with the sponsors enrolled in TAP. And that TAP advisor can aid them in creating connections with professional, clinical, and patient advocacy societies and payers, as well as expedited short-form interactions with FDA reviewers, sometimes as short as a 14-day turnaround, which is a pretty significant leap in that timeline for interaction. So again, I will emphasize you can still have interactions with us without being in the TAP program or the Breakthrough Devices program. Now, CDRH recognizes that there are other ways that we need to engage with sponsors and external stakeholders, avenues that go beyond addressing the questions of a single sponsor. CDRH has numerous programs listed here that are intended to foster external collaborations with academic, clinical, and industry communities, one of which I'd like to emphasize today, collaborative communities. It's the top one listed there. Now, collaborative communities bring together diverse stakeholders to achieve common goals, solve shared challenges, and leverage collective opportunities in the areas of medical device development and regulatory science. Collaborative communities focus on broad outcomes, not specific, and impacts, and may have multiple deliverables that benefit its members. Thus, a collaborative community can produce deliverables to serve their goals, like a literature review of existing clinical outcome assessments, ethical and clinical practice guidelines, or the development of standards. The FDA may participate as a member of a collaborative community, but we can't start them. And we may consider adopting the solutions developed by the community if doing so is in the best interest of public health and policy and consistent with the law. Now, I'd like to emphasize that there is an active collaborative community ongoing for implanted BCI devices that is already established and free to join. And I've linked it here at the bottom, their website. This group is actively working on creating roadmaps for how to identify and develop appropriate outcome measures for IBCIs, implanted BCIs. FDA is an active participant in this collaborative community, and if you're interested in learning more about what they're doing, you can find more information on that website. We also have two pathways to develop tools in conjunction with FDA and in partnership with external stakeholders that could be useful to you. Now, first, the catalog of regulatory science tools linked at the top of this slide provides a peer-reviewed resource for medical device companies to use where standards and qualified medical device development tools, which we'll talk about next, do not yet exist. Some of these tools may be useful to you as part of your preclinical testing related to chemical characterization in particular. If you're considering using a tool from this catalog in your marketing submissions, note that these tools have not been qualified yet as medical device development tools, and FDA has not evaluated the suitability of these tools within any specific contexts of use. Now, based on that last statement, you can start to get an idea of what medical device development tools are, MDDTs. The MDDT program may be useful if you're developing like a clinical outcome assessment or a testing method, and you want to work with us to validate your methodology. Ultimately, this results in a tool that would be available for public use that FDA would have evaluated and reviewed and approved as being suitable within a specific context of use. So it provides an avenue for others to then use similar tools that you've developed, and FDA has kind of put their stamp of approval on that use. I want to direct you to some guidance documents and useful materials for you to reference if you're interested in learning more about the regulatory pathway or implanted BCIs and how we've reviewed them thus far. In 2021, we held a webinar introducing our implanted brain-computer interface device guidance, and both the webinar and associated guidance are linked here. We also have a webpage of resources specifically aimed at those developing neuro-related devices. And you can find on this site many of the links that I'm sharing here, as well as additional information. And we've also linked some of our past papers, including an overview of the regulation of neurological devices. Again, you will be submitting to the Office for Hearing and Vision, not to the Office of Neurological Devices, but there's going to be quite a bit of overlap with your devices and my office. So I'll note that the BCI guidance document that I mentioned is focused on implanted BCIs intended for use in patients with paralysis or amputation, which obviously yours most likely is not for persons with hearing loss. Now, however, most of the guidance is indication and population-specific agnostic. So only certain aspects of the clinical performance testing section are specific to paralysis or amputation. And I want to emphasize that the guidance covers far more information about safety considerations for BCI devices, including biocompatibility and animal safety testing. But what I'm showing you here is just a list of the non-clinical bench testing. Now, non-clinical bench testing is only one part of the non-clinical performance testing that's needed to support your future submissions. But as you can see, we have outlined a specific list of tests that would be required, and there's further description in the guidance document about each of these. So the guidance indicates that depending on your device design, intended use, and the proposed mitigations, the data required to reach approval may vary. This is particularly relevant in your case, as your submissions will be reviewed by OHT1. As a result, I'd strongly recommend that you submit pre-submissions to receive feedback on your planned clinical outcome assessments and critical safety testing protocols. I can't overemphasize the value of requesting feedback on your planned animal study and chemical characterization or biocompatibility testing protocols prior to running them. We can save you significant amounts of time and money if you come and talk to us first. With that, I'm going to wrap up this presentation. I think I fit it in about under 15 minutes. And if you had any questions, if we have extra time, I'm happy to answer them. And if we're out of time, I'll pass it over.
Say, I have a question.
Sure.
So you talked about programs that were available to help patients with either debilitative or life-threatening diseases.
Mhm.
Is hearing loss?
That
one of
depends
those?
on how you frame your breakthrough submission. So the typical FDA answer is it depends, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. So when you think about a breakthrough device submission in particular, you need to prove that in your patient population, the entirety of the patient population included in your indication for use, that population is either they have a life-threatening or irreversibly disabling condition. So life-threatening meaning either one that is life-threatening now or that if left untreated will evolve into a life-threatening condition. And irreversibly debilitating is fairly self-explanatory, but you'll need to make a case for why that disease or condition represents the entirety of the population you've included and meets those conditions.
My second question is, you said that to date, the BCI work has been for amputations and for paralysis, but we all know that there are BCIs for vision.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that like the same type of rules? Are we going to be
Mhm.
following what the vision people are doing?
Yep. We've all largely followed the same pathway and rules and expectations for what studies must accomplish prior to getting into first in human use. Obviously, we have no BCIs on the market at this point for implanted BCIs, either in OHT1 or in OHT5. So we've been coordinating between our offices for quite some time to ensure that we have consistent expectations and consistent feedback between offices, which is why if you come into OHT1, you'll likely be involved with some of the reviewers from OHT5.
So I think we do have time for a question or two.
You said in your first slides that it has to be better. Does it mean superiority or is it inferiority fine?
For a breakthrough device submission, you need to prove that your device has a reasonable expectation of being more effective than currently available alternatives. So not as effective, more effective.
A question back here. You talked a lot about the device side. Some of the folks here might be talking about optogenetics. I think that was mentioned in the announcement. Any advice for folks who might be doing more biological approaches?
So specifically, David, I'm curious why you're asking that question. David used to be the office director for OHT5, for those of you who aren't aware. So I don't know if he's for everyone else. So for optogenetics, obviously we have had fewer submissions in that area. We don't have a guidance document released for that. We're going to be in an interesting intersection with optogenetics submission, determining who has sort of jurisdiction, whether it's CDRH or the Center for Biologics. Most likely the Center for Biologics at this point would be leading those submissions, not CDRH, though we would be involved in the review. I think at this point, they'd be leaning towards having the Center for Biologics lead those reviews, which would significantly change some of the feedback that you'd be getting about what's required in order to move through and how those clinical trials would be designed.
Going back to the breakthrough designation once again, so existing hearing aids are not FDA approved for their efficacy.
Mhm.
So how would you even prove, like if some great new device comes out of this program that works much better than hearing aids, how would you even prove superiority if for the old devices it has not been established as a baseline?
So you could do a comparative study, would likely be the pathway forward for that. There are other approaches as well, depending on literature reviews, things like that. But it would depend on the pathway you're using.
I'm Jay Thakor. I have just one question, well, two. do you recommend applying to breakthrough devices before or after a pilot clinical study? Or first in
Before.
human, sorry.
I'd recommend you apply before. So typically we'd want, and this depends on how your device is designed and what your pathway is. Like if you're implanting a device in the brain in that initial first in human study, I'd recommend you come in before because we would expect that you'd need an IDE in order to get approval to implant in humans. And that would potentially expedite some of the interactions you'd need in order to determine what testing you'd need to get approval for that IDE. So coming in early actually can be very advantageous.
Thank you. And my other question was, is the expectation that the devices that might be selected for this program would be class 2 or class 3 devices?
That depends on the device and how it's designed and the risks associated, how long it's planned to be implanted, whether it's a permanent implant or not, whether there's a battery implanted, all of that might influence the classification of the device. Most BCIs, though, would be class 3 if there's a brain implant.
Okay, thank you. I just know some subcutaneous devices are class 2, so that's why I was asking.
Yep.
Interesting that you differentiate between early feasibility and feasibility. Is that based on the maturity of the device or what?
Not necessarily. They're just two different pathways for submitting to FDA. So early feasibility are smaller studies for a device that's still in early development, typically, one where you're trying to figure out, is this device even feasible to work, how best to use it, what's the best patient population to move forward with, what sort of outcomes should we be looking at. It's really for that early investigational work, sort of your pilot studies. The traditional feasibility study is generally more modeled towards a device that's either already gone through an early feasibility study or a device that's already been on market with a different indication, and now they're coming in to pursue a new indication, and they might want to evaluate in a smaller study population before moving to their pivotal study to pursue that marketing indication. That's typically how they're used. There can be other ways, of course, but typically how I've seen them used.
Great.
Cool.
Answered all the questions.
All right, great.
Thank you very much. So next I'm going to ask Kelly King to come up, and maybe we're going to do it from the chairs rather than from the podium. So the reason why I asked Dr. King to join us today is because at the end of the day, this is all about patients. This is all about helping people to hear. And there may be no one in the world who understands the needs of patients better than Dr. King, right? And so that not only is she working at NIH to do this, but she sees the patients and she understands what their needs are. And at the end of the day, what we are developing has to be a product that helps patients. So let me start with that. When does someone come to you and ask for help? Where are they on the journey of hearing loss?
Usually when their spouse brings them in, which I say a little bit jokingly, but also in reality, a lot of times it's our family and friends who notice the signs and symptoms of hearing loss first. We are very good at convincing ourselves it's lots of things other than hearing loss. We're also very good at compensating. People go above and beyond to work harder to plug in the gaps with their brain that their ears are missing. And people are not quick to want to admit or acknowledge that they might be having a problem with hearing. So it's not uncommon for a family member to be behind the motivation. We are seeing some change in that. I think we're at a bit of a watershed moment in the awareness of hearing loss and hearing in general, and its contributions to overall health and well-being, to healthy aging, We now have primary care physicians talking with their patients about hearing. That never used to happen before. The popular press has done a lot of reporting in the last 5 or so years on connections, not just with cognitive decline, which of course have gotten a lot of attention understandably, but with social isolation and depression, with falls. So people are beginning to understand sort of at a societal level of how hearing contributes to healthy aging, and they're more motivated than ever before to want to do something about it.
So the solution today for most people with hearing loss is a hearing aid. What does a hearing aid do, and what does a hearing aid not do?
Hearing aids, at the end of the day, are loudness devices. They turn sound up. They try to overcome the challenge of audibility. Yes, I'm a big proponent in good signal-to-noise ratio, Cal. So yeah. They try to overcome the issue of audibility for people with hearing loss. How can we make sound loud enough that they're able to detect it and then process it? There's a challenge with hearing loss that once you begin to lose hearing, you begin to shrink the dynamic range over which you can hear. Someone with normal hearing has a tremendous dynamic range. We can hear everything from rustling leaves up to jet engine planes, right? As you lose hearing, that dynamic range shrinks and shrinks. And so the window in which you can hear sound, where you can move from being just barely audible to painful at the upper limit, begins to shrink. And hearing aids have to work within whatever that window is. And that becomes a harder challenge the more hearing loss you have. So hearing aids make sound louder. Their goal is to make sound audible for an individual. They have lots of bells and whistles that come with them these days, some of which have made a big difference in performance. Directional microphones are a great example of that. Bluetooth technology, streaming with devices or in certain environments. All of these are great. Many patients love them, but at the end of the day, a hearing aid makes sound louder. It doesn't necessarily make sound clearer.
So we have on the screen a schematic of an audiogram. Explain to us what is an audiogram and what, as an expert, you're trying to get from the results of an audiogram.
Sure. The audiogram is the gold standard test result when you go in and you get a hearing test. We evaluate an individual's ability to hear simple, pure tones across a range of frequencies, and we mark on this graph what their threshold is for hearing sensitivity across that range of frequencies. We define threshold not as the softest sound you can hear 100% of the time, but the softest sound that you can hear 50% of the time. So this is truly just barely audible. And you can see on the y-axis, you have loudness. It's sort of the reverse of many graphs. So it goes from very soft sounds to very loud sounds. And on the x-axis, you have frequency. It's laid out like a piano from low pitches up to high pitches. We indicate the left ear response in X's and the right ear response in O's. This audiogram doesn't have any of those symbols plotted on it, but what you do see plotted on it is what we refer to as the audiogram of familiar sounds. So you see lots of speech sounds plotted there and where the energy of that speech information is. And also it gives you a sense of where average conversational speech takes place, where birds chirping take place, where your lawnmower takes place. So this is a really valuable counseling tool when we talk to patients about the sorts of sounds that they may be missing. Hearing loss is not binary. It's not, yes, I hear it or no, I don't. It's way within the shades of gray. Did that person say fetch or catch or stitch or pitch? Now I've got to use context and visual information immediately to try to figure out what's going on and keep up with it. Most hearing loss also is not flat, so you don't have the same amount of hearing loss across each frequencies. The most common kinds of hearing loss from aging are sloping, where our sensitivity is poorer in the higher frequencies than it is in the low frequencies. Most of the time it's symmetric, but it doesn't have to be. And on the left, you see some description of what people with a mild or a moderate hearing loss may experience. Typically, that's based on what we refer to as a 4-frequency pure tone average. So we're taking the average of someone's sensitivity in the mid-frequency range. And the reason we focus on that mid-frequency range is because that's where most of the energy of speech is, which is the most important signal we listen to.
So one of the terms that people involved in this program are going to have to really, really know a lot is the separation of speech from noise. Explain what that is.
Well, generally, speech is someone talking, and it's often something of interest. Although when you have multiple people talking at once, you may only want to be paying attention to one of those individuals. The classic scenario is the cocktail party phenomenon, where you have many people talking all at once, many different voices coming from many different locations. You're typically trying to hear the person speaking in front of you, but you have lots of competing noise around you. Most of it is also competing speech. And what we are really good at is tuning into the signal of interest and tuning out the signal of non-interest. In this case, that would be noise. It's competing babble or competing speech, but it's noise. It's not a signal of interest. What we are also really good at is dramatically switching our attention. So I might be talking to Cal at the cocktail party, drink in hand, enjoying a lovely conversation, and I hear Chris over in the corner say the name Kelly. Without turning my head, without shifting my eyes, I can immediately begin to attune to Chris's voice and pay a little more attention over there while I'm dividing my attention with Cal. It's really a phenomenal and rapid process. As we lose hearing, we have a harder and harder time separating the interest, the signal of interest, that speech that we want to hear, from the noise, whatever the signal is that we don't want to hear.
So we can do that this very moment, that we're all listening to you attentively. If we wanted to, we could listen to the air conditioning.
That's right. Or the person typing, or somebody walk in the room behind us. We don't see them walk in, but we hear the click of the door. And not only do we know it's behind us, with exceptional accuracy, we can pinpoint in space where that door is when the person walks in without ever seeing them.
So, two phenomena I want you to explain to everyone. Do you go to a wedding? The old people say the band is too loud. The young people say, I don't think the band is so loud. And they're both right. Why are they both right?
Oh, well, I am decidedly in the first group at this stage of life. It's probably a combination of factors. They may or may not enjoy the music being played, and that, of course, ties into it. And I say that in jest, but also the connection between our hearing system and our limbic system, our emotional state, is very, very strong. We want to enjoy what we're listening to if it's going to be at that volume. But in part, it's because that band playing, especially at a louder volume, has now made it harder for everybody who has a little bit of hearing loss in order to engage in the rest of the wedding. It makes it distracting. It makes it hard to hear. You see individuals unplug, withdraw, maybe leave early. Whereas younger, healthier ears are, first of all, probably on the dance floor and not talking, maybe, I don't know. But they're able to compensate better. And so it keeps things more enjoyable.
I guess where I want to go is more in terms of what's happening in your brain.
Yeah.
That when you start to lose your ability to hear, the hyperexcitability of the neurons make the sound appear to be louder.
That's true. That's very true. Yes. The same intensity sound can be interpreted as louder for certain individuals than others. And that has to do, that's a phenomenon with hearing loss that occurs when certain regions of our brain from certain regions of our cochlea are not being stimulated for as long. Yeah.
The other phenomenon is the grandkids say, Grandpa, you don't understand a word I'm saying. And Grandpa says, no, I hear everything. And they're both right.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they both right?
Yeah. That's right. We hear a lot about people who mumble, about grandkids who mumble. They're not speaking clearly. There's really a mixture of phenomenon there too. So we have hearing loss, the sensitivity of hearing loss. We also know that as we age, our auditory system changes in its ability to process temporal speech, how fast speech is. Accented speech is another issue for older individuals. Even when you equate and account for hearing sensitivity, the performance on the audiogram, we know older individuals have a harder time with faster rate of speech than younger individuals. And that's particularly an issue for young children who are very excited. Young children also often have higher frequency voices. And so their voice pitch is falling more in a range where grandpa is likely to have some hearing loss.
Which brings us to why we're here today. So when we start thinking of hearing loss as brain mediated, besides just cochlear and ear mediated, what does moving that conversation to the brain help us in terms of being able to help people to hear better?
Yeah. I mean, you said it early in the day, Cal. We don't hear with our ears. We hear with our brains. That has always been the case. The field is sort of catching up with what is naturally true. When I talk to somebody with hearing loss and they say, you know, you might have just told me that I have hearing loss. You might have just diagnosed me for the first time. I think I'm doing okay. And that might be true. But what I also know is true is that you are working harder than everybody else in the room to be okay. You are putting in effort and cognitive load in order, again, to use context, visual information, what makes sense, to quickly plug in the gaps that your ears are missing. And there is always going to be a cost with that. And the question for many individuals is, what is the cost? And when will it catch up with you? It's not really a matter of if, but when.
And so when you see what the potential benefits of our hearing program might be, what is it that you see? And believe me, all compliments are appreciated.
Well, what excites me about what you all are here to try to do, I mean, it's cutting edge, it's innovative, but it is exactly what I think we ultimately need, because we hear with our brains, not just with our ears. If we are only fixing the issue at the ears, we will never fully get to fixing the problem completely. This approach will bring us closer to the idea of precision audiology, of precision hearing work than anything else that I've seen. That term gets thrown around a lot, overused, if you ask me, oftentimes without really being well defined. But in this case, with this design, you are truly trying to leverage and take advantage of an individual's own system and allow the technology to adapt to that. And I think that is the heart of what we want to accomplish with precision approaches. And that, to me, makes it far more likely, once we figure out the technology, once you all figure out the technology, it makes it far more likely to be successful.
Right. So success is why we're here. And so each of the proposers here has to put together a team that's going to help them to create the device that's going to be most effective. What should everyone here be thinking about as to who they need on their team to provide that help?
I think I'm a little biased in my example, or in my answer rather. You have to engage end users, and you have to do it. If you're not already doing it after today, then start doing it. You have to engage patients. You have to engage clinicians. I'm at NIH. We have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into interventions that actually work and that sit on the shelves, because maybe they work, but it takes 12 postdocs in a lab standing around to actually get it to do something. Or it takes, 6 hours in a test booth, which no clinician or patient is ever going to agree to. So please engage your end users right out of the gate. I think it's going to inform your systems. I think you're going to learn things from them. I was so pleased to hear it mentioned earlier. The reason these things fail is because that sort of engagement doesn't happen early on. And I think for a project like this, as innovative and ambitious as it is, it becomes even more important.
Talk to me a little bit about the cosmetics of hearing restoration. What will people put up with, and what will people not put up with?
Yeah. This has been a long-standing and I'm happy to say sort of evolving issue. Cosmetics is not a small factor for patients. There is a lot of stigma around hearing loss. And so if you're telling me I have hearing loss and now I have to wear a device that tells the world I have hearing loss, people are not running to embrace that. For a very, very long time, the request from patients was make it invisible. I want it to be small. I want it to sit inside the ear canal so that nobody knows that it's there. Never mind that is terrible for acoustics. It actually generates a worse signal. It makes your own voice sound worse. We know that's a problem. It's going to make the sound that your hearing aid produces, you're not going to like it as much, but people are still willing to do that sometimes when they think that nobody's going to know they have a hearing loss. I spend a lot of time talking to patients, trying to point out to them that a hearing loss is a lot more obvious than a hearing aid. But there is still something to wearing a device on your ear that historically people have not been very comfortable with. I think, again, we're at a really exciting time because I think that's starting to shift in this world of wearables where we are wearing more devices all over our bodies, including our ears. It is becoming more normalized. And so I think some of the stigma we might see leave, but not all of it. It's an issue that is real for many people.
Okay, so I thought, so now I've learned something right away. I thought that the reason why I'm seeing fewer in the ear and more back to the traditional behind was that with these new AI-driven hearing aids, you just needed more processing and a lot more hardware than would actually fit in your ear. But you're telling me that it's acoustically why we're seeing this behind the ear more than in the ear.
Yeah, the hearing aid manufacturers, the audiologists all know that acoustically it's better for you to wear the device behind your ear to try to keep the ear canal as open as possible to allow access to whatever residual good hearing you have. Because again, it's almost never a flat hearing loss across the audiogram. The most classic configuration is a sloping loss where you have more hearing loss in the high frequencies than in the low frequencies. And when you plug up the ear canal with some sort of, pseudo-invisible in the ear device, you're plugging up that good low frequency hearing and people do not like it.
So there are some people who have had hearing loss in one ear, either congenitally or for a very, very long time. But the garden variety of aged people are losing their hearing pretty much at the same time. And obviously, there's probably a little difference. One ear might be hear better than the thing. When do you give somebody one hearing aid, and when do you give somebody two hearing aids?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there is a surprising gap in the evidence around this, but I will tell you that audiologists for a very long time almost exclusively recommend two hearing aids compared to one. And it sort of naturally makes sense. We were given two ears for a reason. We have a bilateral system. The way that we are able to pinpoint with incredible accuracy that person walking in the door behind us is because of our ability to localize. And you cannot localize without two ears. You cannot localize without the ability to have input from both ears. You can detect just fine. Your sensitivity, if you only have one ear, you can have excellent sensitivity, but you will not localize. And those individuals will fall apart in a noisy environment too. So that ability to localize and detect where sound is coming from is also critically important for understanding speech in a noisy environment.
Talk to us a little bit about tinnitus. I have one investigator who has to call it tinnitus.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to clear that up first? Is there a proper?
It's so funny. I mean, in the field professionally, I have found that most people call it tinnitus. And I would say that, up to about a third of my patients will call it tinnitus. So it's tomato, tomato, although I've never heard somebody say tomato. And yeah.
So, do hearing aids improve tinnitus?
They can. Yeah.
Why?
Well, why is a good question. Tinnitus is a remarkable phenomenon. You can have normal hearing and experience it, and you can be profoundly deaf and experience it. Our best understanding at this point in time is it is strongly correlated with individuals who have hearing loss. And it has to do with an overactive brain that is not being stimulated the way that it used to be. So by putting on hearing aids, you may be replacing that stimulation that was lost, and it can help with tinnitus. There's also, you're amplifying sound. Some existing hearing aids in the market will actually play a low-level masking noise. They're known as tinnitus maskers. This helps the brain focus on another sound besides their tinnitus. We are incredibly good at turning up sounds that we pay attention to, but if we can distract ourselves with playing another sound, even a low-level sound in the background, it can help address tinnitus for a lot of patients.
So then now when we move our hearing improvement from the ear to the brain, what's that going to do to tinnitus?
Well, my understanding of your design is that you're still going to be playing amplified sound. The hope would be, of course, that it would help tinnitus, right?
Why?
Well, you're giving the ear something else to listen to, and you're also giving the brain something else to listen to. It's sort of a two-hit punch right there. So I would think that would have a lot of potential to help tinnitus.
And then my final question, which is to go back to what we were talking about with a hearing aid in either ear. Mm-hmm. Would you guess that our proposers are going to need to put PCIs on one side alone, or they're going to need to put two of them in order to get people to hear?
Oh, cow. There's a lot of smart people in this room and who are going to partner with a lot of other smart people who are going to figure that out. And I'm not a better. But my understanding of the auditory system would suggest that bilateral input makes a huge difference, however that's configured.
Because I come from the world of vision,
mm-hmm.
and us vision people are very snobby, about our field, But when I got into hearing is a lot more complicated than vision because the processing of the signal takes place in your eye. And so that when the message leaves your eye, it's a straight shot from your eye all the way back to your visual cortex. From your ears, it starts going across and up and down and bringing in other parts of the brain and balance and all this other type of stuff.
It's also much faster than vision.
Oh?
Yes. It's the fastest sensory system in our body. It's incredibly quick, which would be another thing to keep in mind as you're designing these technologies. People are never going to stop using visual information. Whether you have normal hearing or not, we all use visual cues. So whatever you design has to work within the fastest system in the body. That's our sensory system. Yes.
All right.
You also have much easier access to your organ of interest than we do, right? The eye is so easy to access. I've been jealous of you all for years.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think yes, that my ear friends tell me that the cochlea is behind the thickest wall of your skull.
That's right. It's the size of a garden pea, and it's nested way deep in the skull in the densest, hardest bone in the body. Not easy to access.
Not easy to access, which is why we're going to skip it and go right to the brain.
That's another reason. Yeah.
To the brain. I think we do have time for a question or two. Does anybody have a question for Dr. King? Please.
Hold on one second.
Oh, let's wait for a mic so everybody can hear, because that's what we care about, right?
Hello.
Hubert Lim from University of Minnesota. Thank you for that. Very helpful. I heard speech and noise quite a bit, and I just heard tinnitus, as also some challenges. What are the success outcomes? Is it focused heavily on speech and noise in this project, or are you looking to address tinnitus as well as more complex hearing processing? What would success metrics be geared towards for this project?
So thank you for that question. And I think it really goes to the question that I tried to ask, which is what is still the challenge to somebody who wears hearing aids?
Yeah.
So why isn't a hearing aid the ultimate solution?
That's right. Yeah, I probably didn't address what hearing aids don't do very well. At the end of the day, understanding speech is the most important thing that humans do for the most part. And it certainly is at the top of the list. Understanding speech and noise is the #1 complaint of everybody with hearing loss across the board. Hearing aids have gotten better at trying to help with speech and noise, but it still is a major problem. And this is why, it's one of the big reasons why uptake of existing technology is still very low from where we would like to see it. I mean, somewhere around 20%-ish of people in the United States who could benefit from a hearing aid use them. There's lots of complicated reasons behind that. I mentioned stigma. Cost and access are another major issue. But even in systems and settings where cost and access are removed, people are not always eager to put on these devices. They can be hard for older folks to manipulate. They're tiny. Getting them in and out of the ear is a challenge. It's technology. Not everybody is tech savvy. You may spend, $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 on a pair of hearing aids, and then you put them in. And unlike your readers, you do not have 20/20 hearing. And that is often deeply disappointing to patients. Patients can do really well in quiet. They sit in the doctor's office with their physician. That is not a difficult situation to hear. It's when they go out in the real world, family dinners, at church, going out to the theater. That's where they're struggling, and hearing aids have not appreciably moved the needle there in a long time.
You answered my next question, which is people get fitted for hearing aids and then leave them in the drawer.
It is the in the drawer phenomenon. That's right. Yep.
And why? Why are they in the drawer?
Because they are disappointed by them. They are frustrated by them. They are not getting the yield it's not worth the effort, is what they say.
Okay. And that yield that they're not getting is?
The improvement in quality of life and the improvement in speech and noise. Absolutely. We just supported, along with a number of our federal partners, CDC, VA, DOD, the National Institute on Aging, National Academy's consensus study on meaningful outcome measures in adult hearing healthcare. If you haven't found your way to that report, I would encourage you to do so. And the committee was tasked with evaluating what matters most, both to clinicians and patients, and speech and noise was at the very top. Not surprisingly.
And so I think that's really what motivates us in developing the hearing program. Mm-hmm. That speech and noise is such an issue for people, and it is what their hearing aid, in many cases, is not providing for them.
That's right.
And so that's why we're here. That our hope is that with this technology, we can do something major for speech and noise.
The lawnmower is currently broken. I would like to cancel I need someone my with a trailer that can help me get it hauled to the repair shop.
Maybe this is a test of speech and noise understanding.
That was for the slide.
Yeah, so Nitish Thakur, Johns Hopkins, and thank you for your presentation. A quick comment, my colleague Eric Young was saying that localization time is 65 microseconds. So you are right about that fastest system in the brain. Anyway, my question is, can you separate hearing, which is peripheral, to neuronal brain activity, which is possibly this program, to cognitive? Meaning, because with age-related, you've also mentioned cognitive decline, etc. So even if we have hearing to the neuronal decoding or whatever stimulate, we still have cognitive part and perception. So is that a part of both of you, something we must address, or it's later, by the way? Cognitive neuroscience of hearing.
So the answer is read the ISO. No, the cognition, I think, is clearly important, but I think that is beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here in this program.
I'm Irving Weinberg. I run a medtech venture studio. So people who've had profound hearing, basically no hearing since birth, often have speech disabilities as well. So is your project aimed at helping those people? Because I presume that that part of the brain is not as developed as it would be if they had normal hearing.
Yeah. I think that we had a slide up earlier that says that the hearing program could help up to 99% of people with hearing loss. That is the 1%. And so that this is a program for people who have had hearing and lost it. This is not a program for people who have never had hearing.
And am I right, Cal, that you're also really targeting individuals with hearing loss sort of in the mild to severe range? So profound hearing loss, which was the term that I heard you use, is really not the target for this technology right now?
Certainly in the journey that patients go through, where they start out mild to moderate to severe, eventually could get to profound. For those patients, it actually could, because the algorithms, as they progress, are going to learn more and more about what they need and be able to do more direct stimulation to really help them when they get to the really profound areas. I think that a patient who enters at that very profound stage is going to find this to be difficult. Okay. One last question.
I'm Blaine from University of North Carolina, and my question is, does early treatment help with progression? For example, let's see if you start wearing a hearing aid at a mild stage, would that help with progression at all? Or do you see most patients progressing regardless of wearing hearing aids or not?
Yeah, sorry. So I'd be interested in what your feeling is, but the deterioration that's occurring in your cochlea, we are not going to be addressing, and so the progression of the condition is going to occur naturally. What we want to be able to do is have our algorithms follow you on your journey, type of thing. The NIH is working on multiple programs for regeneration of your cochlea and regeneration of these hair cells that are responsible. And so what we're doing is hopefully complementary to what they're doing to actually regenerate the system.
Yeah, I would say early intervention helps in the sense that it helps with the adaptability. It helps in people getting used to using the technology before it becomes very severe. So I think there are benefits there. There's also very much an open question right now in the field because there has been this intense interest and very strong signal between sensory loss, both vision and hearing, and cognitive decline as to whether or not treating hearing loss could alter the trajectory of cognitive decline. And I would point you towards the ACHIEVE trial, which just published its initial landmark study within the last couple of years. And basically what they found is that in a very large cohort, they did not see an effect of hearing intervention on cognitive trajectory overall, but in a sub-cohort of individuals who were at higher risk for faster cognitive decline, they did see a protective effect of hearing intervention. So this is certainly an area that is worth exploring a lot further and that the field remains very interested in.
Right. A huge thank you to Dr. Kelly King.
Thanks for inviting me, Cal.
Okay, so we're going to move forward, and the next section, I'm going to ask Chris Smith to come up here and lead the FAQ section. Chris.
Great, thank you, Cal. So we're going to start with a brief FAQ session. We want to say first that we've received a lot of questions and we hear you. I would also like to invite the panel too from the ARPA-H hearing team, as well as our FDA partners too, to come join us for any questions after we go through the slides. Okay, so we decided that the best way to respond to a lot of the questions we received would be through starting this off first with the slides. And the first thing that we want to address are questions that are surrounding teaming, as this is one of the most critical components to the hearing program. So to start, you as a proposer can submit a single proposal as a prime principal investigator, PI, and you can also submit 2 proposals as a sub-proposer. However, to note, if you choose that you'll be on multiple proposals, you cannot have duplicative efforts, so you can't repeat the same scope of works across multiple proposals. Further, you are welcome to team with any entity, whether it's industry, academia, nonprofits. However, federal entities are not allowed as prime or sub-awardees. When submitting the proposal, you will see templates in there which will show that you can only have 1 PI, and the rest of your team will be labeled as co-investigators. And to the number of co-investigators or your team size, there is no limit. But you must include detailed budget information on each institution, including the program management structure and coordination. We emphasized this earlier, but we want to repeat this. You have to submit your solution encompassing all 3 TAs. We are not going to consider proposals that do not include all 3 TAs within the technical scope of work. Finally, we can't establish your team. You're here today, and you have the ability to make introductions with each other here in person. As mentioned earlier, we have the lightning talks, network over lunch, and the poster session this afternoon. If you're still looking to partner, again, we've included the QR code that you saw earlier on the bottom part of the slide, and you can scan this to search or upload your own teaming profile. So let's get a bit more into now the technical aspects of the program for responding to some questions. We understand that if you look into the ISO, the metrics are quite ambitious. But the advancements in science cannot be made without failures along the way. Many of you and your peers have actually helped inform the scoping of our metrics, and we believe that you can achieve these to meet the program goal. These metrics will be used to assess the state of the technical program and how much progress you've made to inform the programmatic decisions. You can achieve these metrics, and it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to continue through all phases. However, these are also not necessarily rigid go, no go criteria either. And if you have an advanced prototype, you are more than welcome to move faster. We've also been getting questions about whether or not there's a preferred solution. You are welcome to propose any approach as long as it is within the lines of the TAs as outlined in the program ISO. So we refer you to refer to that when trying to see is what you're trying to propose compliant to the program. We also welcome metrics that are not mentioned in the ISO as long as they fit within the solution. We also answered this earlier throughout the presentation, but to re-summarize, by the end of phase 2 and 3, you must demonstrate that devices can be delivered without having to access through cranium. So we're not looking for solutions where by end of phase 2, phase 3, you're going to drill a burr hole or make some sort of small incision to deliver devices. It has to be not through the cranium. Next, we want to respond to questions regarding how you can meet with the hearing team to discuss your ideas. We cannot meet with you to answer any questions as they relate to the ISO. We do have time for today. There will be sidebars later on today. You can have an opportunity to register for those or sign up for those if you're in person during the lunch period outside by the registration desk. In terms of other methods of feedback channels, we'll officially give you feedback via the solution summaries or proposals if you are encouraged to submit one. If you have an idea that is outside the scope of the hearing program, you are welcome to submit to the Mission Office ISO Open Opportunities. If you are a foreign entity, you may submit a solution to the hearing program. However, it is encouraged that you collaborate with domestic US entities. This is answered earlier, but if you are a federal entity or FFRDC, you are welcome to contact the hearing team via the program email, hearing@arpa-h.gov, and which is also shown here on the slide. And please include any ideas for how you'd like to work together. In terms of solution summaries and timeline for feedback, solution summaries will be due June 29th, where you will receive receive feedback on your proof of concept idea, and then you will be encouraged or discouraged from submitting a full proposal. Full proposals will be due on August 14th. If you do not submit a solution summary, we will not evaluate your full proposal. For those that submit a solution summary and full proposal, you will receive feedback based on the criteria outlined in the ISO. Now, the next question is, how much should my project cost? And this is going to reiterate some of the points that Bill made earlier. There is no budget ceiling, and you will need to propose to us what is realistic, justifiable, comprehensive, and reasonable for your project or program. Regarding salary caps, we show this here on the slide on updated guidance, which is also available online. So we'll just leave this up for 1 second. Now, regarding cost breakdowns, we do allow overhead costs and only necessary travel as it relates to the success of the program. On sam.gov, we also provide templates for the cost proposal as well as the technical proposals. We expect that you will use these templates as we provide them. Last, regarding the IP, the government does not take ownership, and we want to ensure that, at minimum, IP restrictions will not stop you from creating breakthrough technologies. So for what we presented today, including this event, these materials will be posted online shortly after the event. What we ask is that you carefully read the program ISO when deciding if you want to propose a solution and what the expectations are for the hearing program. We'll have some time now for live questions, and if none of your questions have been answered today, you are more than welcome to submit a question via the QR link that's shown here, and I'll leave this slide up as we go through the live Q&A. So any questions?
I have a scientific question. Given that we heard about the visual system during the earlier discussion and all that, do you know of any seriously attempted cortical stimulation like you emphasize in this program approaches for other sensory systems, or is this really the first one?
Let me take this.
Non-invasive, but because the invasive is really realistic and can be seen as you're well aware, but the non-invasive.
So is the question, is non-invasive possible? Is that the question?
I want to know if there is an existence proof that such an approach is actually being pursued in a deep scientific way in any other sensory system outside of this program.
Yes.
No. You mean
Yes.
visual system, for example?
To go to type of thing. That there are several companies that have really developed a bunch of very interesting ways of potentially getting a BCI into place, including intravascular, extravascular, intrathecal, intranasal, subgaleal. So yeah.
This is a far more integrated approach. And that's why I'm asking you if such an integrated approach has been attempted.
Right. So that I'll give you a little window into ARPA-H. If someone doesn't say what you're trying to do is impossible, then you don't get approved. Okay? All right? So everything at ARPA-H to start out with has to start with somebody going, oh, you can't do that. Okay?
So this relates to his question. My understanding is that there is some direct stimulation of the visual system to provoke some imagery in the brain. It may be crude, but my understanding is that can happen, at least in animals, and I'm not an expert on that. But my understanding, limited though it is also that the visual system is very well organized in terms of specific orientations being encoded in specific neural regions, colors being encoded in specific regions. As we think about the feedback back into cortex, the sort of arrow into the brain, to evoke responses at specific frequencies. We know that the cochlea is tonotopically organized, but is auditory cortex, does it have any, is it organized to the same degree at all, like the visual system is, that we could expect to stimulate specific frequencies in auditory cortex?
So the simple answer is yes. And if you turn around and look at the gentleman behind you in the pink shirt, he'll tell you exactly how to do that. All right. So
Okay.
that there are several people here who are really, really experts at that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one other question, just about focused attention. Is it well known what we are attending? Like, is there an easy metric for, hey, this person is really wanting to pay attention to this specific sound? Is that well known, or is there a metric to gauge that?
So obviously you read the paper in Nature that came out in the beginning of May, right? And the slide that keeps on playing about I want to cancel my subscription is really from that paper. That kind of points to the fact that you can select which conversation that you want to listen to, and that's really fundamental. And it's kind of why what we're trying to do is so different from hearing aids, because the hearing aid, though it'll try to figure out scenes, the hearing aid doesn't know what you want to hear. And so that what we hope that we can achieve with what we're doing is to listen to intent. And that in the same way that you naturally select which conversation you want to hear, whether you want to listen to me or listen to the air conditioning, that what we'll be able to do with the program is, with your intent, come up with the sounds and frequencies you want to hear better.
Exactly. Yes, I understand that, but I'm just wondering if that intent, if there's a very dependable biomarker for knowing when that intent is present, or where it lies in perceptual space, and I can do the brain.
And we would love you to come up with those.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Testing. Back here. So this is over the lifetime of the program, it's a systems integration play. You very carefully architected the program in 3 technical areas and defined milestones where you can retire risks individually in each technical area separately. But for the program to deliver on its impact vision, the teams need to effectively integrate the systems and de-risk an integrated system. Can you comment on your philosophy for how teams should architect their program management and systems integration functions from the outset? A particular failure mode of ARPA programs that have a systems integration vision is that you have a lot of very capable individual pieces, often led by academic teams or small companies, but the things don't come together effectively. So have you thought about how teams can proactively manage that risk through effective team design?
So what you're saying is absolutely correct. I couldn't agree with you more. But it's not our job to put together the teams, and it's not our job to organize how that team is going to function. All right? That's the PI's responsibility. So I'm with you 100%.
So one question about whether something's in scope, and it kind of relates to that last question, is if we know the visual cortex and we present the information that was heard as a subtitle that is visual, that is visualized, that is readable. So I don't know that somebody will hear the concert the same way as they would have prior to the hearing loss. How important is it that the experience that the patient has is the same as before they lost their hearing?
And I think that along the way, these metrics, which kind of get to the thing, that we are going into a new area. Metrics do not exist, and we're going to have to create our own metrics here.
Yeah, Cal. So congratulations again on getting the program off the ground. I've got a quick question, and I guess as I'm hearing more about what some of the thoughts are on the program, if we're talking about AI, and we were talking about a little bit earlier with Kelly that even bilateral interfaces may be appropriate, right, for localization and so on, and then even directly stimulating neurons and auditory cortex. That sounds ARPA hard to me alone. When you then add non-invasive and then start bringing in potentially optogenetics or nanoparticles or all the other different types of ways, right, that we have learned to work with neurons and stimulate them and maybe record from them with some of those technologies as well, it's just added a whole nother level of complexity to the program. And I was just wondering what you could say about if we're so targeted on a potential not an application, but on a solution, getting it into market, adding that non-invasive layer really just complicated things, especially within the FDA and so on. How are we going to approve all these things? So I was just curious if you could talk to maybe about that and some of the thinking that was happening as the program was being formed.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really very, very simple. Where did that requirement come from? That came from numerous conversations with members of the hearing loss community, where I ask them the question, so would you have a chip put in your brain if you would hear better? And the answer was almost unanimous. Yes, if I could hear better, but not if you had to drill a hole in my head to put it in there. All right. So the goal here is to get a product that people are going to use, that people are going to want, that this is not an academic exercise. This is a practical exercise to come up with a product that people are going to want to have. And that is the requirement that our users have put on us. Please.
This is really exciting. You showed the external component as basically a hearing aid-like device. What are your thoughts on other form factors or other kind of external components? Would that be responsive? You would have any other kind of personal system that the person uses?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So what we don't want are solutions that are going to be, for example, large helmets, hats, something that a user might not be able to bring them everywhere they go. Now, if you want to use something that's sort of similar form factors to that of a hearing aid, maybe a cochlear implant, potentially even glasses, that's acceptable as well. So we want to try to keep it as minimal as possible.
That was part of the question to Dr. King about the cosmetic part of it, right? So that what is someone going to be willing to wear cosmetically in order to get the improvement in vision, in hearing, I'm sorry. Fantastic. Okay, so that wraps up the formal part of our meeting today. I want to reiterate several themes that you've heard throughout the day. Number one, at ARPA-H, we create contracts, we do not give grants. And so we will not be paying you to work, we will be paying you to achieve. Milestones and deliverables are our commodities of achievement. Number two, teaming is crucial. Each team will be responsible for completing all three technical areas, and that will require broad expertise. And number three, we do not believe that there is only one possible solution for the hearing program. We depend on your expertise and creativity to propose the solution you believe will best improve the hearing of people across the spectrum of hearing loss, from mild to profound. Finally, a big thanks to all of you for attending both in person and virtually. We look forward to reading your solution summaries. Thank you very much.